Good afternoon. I'd like to welcome everyone to this week's edition of Imperial as One's Belonging series, where we explore the lived experiences of individuals from the Black, Asian, and minority ethnic communities. Individuals who have shared their experiences of what it means to gain their sense of identity and belonging. And every week I say this, and I'm going to continue saying this. I've got a very, very special guest. And this week I have a guest, and his name is Michael Friend. And he truly is a friend, all right, in many ways. He's a US veteran who founded the Health Ministries Network, and he also co founded the Minority Coalition for Precision Medicine, together with a sickle cell patient advocate, Shakira Cannon. So this afternoon, I'd like to just welcome Michael um, to the show or to the episode and to say, I'm going to ask my first question, which is, can you tell me, as you were growing up, what it is that gave you your sense of identity and your sense of belonging, and help to mold who you are right now?
I would say for the most part, really growing up, I grew up in Baltimore City,
Hmm.
and so growing up in East Baltimore, particularly around the John Hopkins area,
Hmm.
really started to shape the way I view a lot of things in life. I mean, we were at a point where we knew John Hopkins was going to be doing a lot of development in the area, and so I watched the community um, changed dramatically. And that impacted me in many ways because, as much as we like to see progress, we also like to see us as African Americans involved in that progress. And so that was the beginning for me.
And can you hear me still? Sorry.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So growing up in Baltimore as a young boy and near the Johns Hopkins University and the development and everything like that, what were some of the challenges that you faced, and what was it that led you to kind of like go into the military?
I think it was, how uh, how some thought about the hospital.
Hmm.
Conversations around
Hmm.
Hopkins for the most part. Some fears and concerns about
Hmm.
the hospital, and so I was curious as to, and being young, didn't know the real relevance of Hopkins nationally or internationally.
Hmm.
And so, upon discovering, how powerful the institution is, and looking at the community in which it sets and stands in the middle of, didn't make a lot of sense to me. It looks quite different today, but
Can you explain that a little bit? Just elaborate a little bit. So,
yeah,
what was your
sure, sure,
yeah.
yeah. I mean, so you have this prominent universities, prominent hospital, right? And
Hmm.
you have this urban area that's suffering from crime and decay and a lot of issues. And so you would think that to some that there may be more that they could have done, during a certain period. So now
Hmm.
let's look at today. So now we look at today. The area has been redeveloped. I mean, got houses around there which most people can't afford to live in, right? But why now? Uh, and why did it take for the total lack and kind of like devastation to allow the
Hmm.
community to fall to such a level of despair? Um, was it, just speaking freely, was it that, is that part of the process to allow the community to fall so you can get the properties cheaper and
Hmm.
then redevelop, you know? So all that, as we think about it, it's troubling as you grow, you really it starts to make sense. And and as some would say, kind of like it is what it is. I mean, that's what it looks like, and that's what it appears to be. And so that was the beginning from just a thought standpoint. At that time, I wasn't involved in the work that I'm doing currently.
Yeah.
But it did shape the way I started to view things.
So it kind of like got you thinking about what's the motive behind what you're seeing. Yeah. What's the action? What's the reaction to the action that's happening right now? Is that the kind of thing that started to flow through your mind? I don't know. I'm just trying to tell.
Yeah. I mean, you want to know, right? I mean, we're seeing, you're reading about this prominent, and not the Bash Hopkins to that extent, but you're reading about this very prominent institution with all of these resources, right, in every area of the world, right? And then you're looking at this community doing a certain area and era, and it didn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
So so it's in me at some point to, I guess, to make a difference, right? And make a difference in terms of, like, I personally want to know. Like, I'm not, one that I'm good with reading, good with information, but I really want to be at the table where those decisions are made to better understand, what's behind them, or what the thought process is, and what we can do different.
So, with that in mind, what was the rationale for joining the military, for going into the army?
I always, you think about service is important. I mean, being young, I think for me it was one of two things I was thinking about. I was thinking about college, but I was also thinking about military. And to be quite frank, I had a young child very early, so that kind of took college off the table. Right.
Okay.
And so, so military was for me a much better option during that time. Yeah, responsibilities.
So you had a sense of service, a sense of duty, a sense that I can make it. I want to make whatever kind of difference that I can make. Yeah.
For sure.
All right.
For sure.
So one of the things which kind of like thinking about your as you were growing up and making these decisions, and having a young child and a young family, what was it then that got you into the advocacy work which you're doing now? Can you tell us a little bit of how we made that transition from being in the military to the stuff which you do now?
Yeah, that's a good question. Certainly wasn't planned. Being married to a young lady who had sickle cell disease, was living with sickle cell disease, and so of course she mentioned it to me, but at the time it was like kind of dormant in her life, wasn't like showing up in any way. And I would think about, after about 10 years of us being together, being married, it just came on with such a vengeance, like one night, just out of nowhere. And so we wind up going. We were living in Pennsylvania, a smaller town, York, Pennsylvania. And so she's going to the hospital, and quite frankly, they didn't really know what to do, because they wasn't familiar with a lot of sickle cell patients, and so they were asking us what to do, and we were asking them what to do. And so there was the beginning of the problem, right? And so from that, of course, wanted to learn more about sickle cell disease and what is being done and who's doing what. And so that was the very beginning of, of, of moving forward in that area.
So how much about sickle cell did you actually know at that time? Did you know much about it at all, or not really?
And let me tell you, on a scale of 1 to 10, it was probably a 0.
So it's it was below the scale of knowledge,
Right.
effectively.
It wasn't even on the scale. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So what did you do to get to know more about the disease? Where did you go? What resources did you manage to
Well,
find?
well, as I mentioned earlier, I think I have a way of thinking about organizations. So I have these organizational thoughts, right? So, well, first thought would be, well, where's the organization that represents these individuals' sickle cell disease?
Mhm.
Well, to my surprise, they were located in downtown Baltimore. As a matter of fact, if I look out my window right now, I probably can almost hit the building where they were.
Yeah.
And so that was shocking. Like, that organization being located in a prominent city and not knowing a lot about sickle cell disease was a red flag, was a big flag, because you would think that, the national office is in Baltimore, right?
Yeah.
And nothing, like no walks, no, just like nothing.
Mm.
And so started there. My wife at the time had written a book about her life living with sickle cell disease, and so she had a draft of the book. And so we did a quick visit to the national office to see where it is we could work together and collaborate and help her with her book and tell this patient's story.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't a good meeting. I wasn't in the meeting, but when she came out of the meeting, she was in tears.
Oh my.
Yeah.
Why? What did she recall to you about the meeting? What did she tell you?
Well, she just felt like that they wasn't going to support her in her efforts in terms of helping to communicate her story with patients.
Oh,
And I was shocked.
that's what I'm thinking. If you're the national association, why wouldn't
Right.
you want, if somebody's coming to you telling this is my story, why wouldn't you want that to be disseminated on a wide scale?
Well, at the time, and I probably would say even to this day, that they've never been, to me, a patient-centered organization. An organization that really focused on the patient and the voice of the patient. I mean, look at the issues around adults living with sickle cell disease in emergency departments.
Mm-hmm.
That's not an issue that they've taken on head on,
Mm-hmm.
then or now.
Mm-hmm.
Those issues are still prevalent and very, very much the same. So sometimes we can have this thought process, but the reality is that they're just not, and it wasn't at the time. And so cancer at the time, everything was pink.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can remember. I mean, it was
Yeah.
pink. I mean, when I hope and I was kind of inspired by Susan G. Komen, that organization. And I remember, believe there was some book signing or some type of event in Baltimore, which
Mm-hmm.
we may have attended. And I said to her, and I said at the time, and she said, I just want sickle cell disease to be like cancer. I want it to be known.
Mm-hmm.
And I made a promise to her in that moment. Didn't know. So at that point, President Obama was coming into the White House, and I said, well, we're just going to go for it. we're gonna go for it at the highest level. African American president, African American disease, makes sense to me.
Yeah.
And can't tell you exactly how that happened, but I was able to get in touch with the White House and started to engage one of the offices there that handles those events.
Mm-hmm.
And we made the request and garnered the support of the sickle cell community, and a lot of excitement around the possibility of having this meeting.
Mm-hmm.
Well, of course, the national was kind of on the sideline with it, wasn't really fully, because it's patient-led movement. And we wind up having a conversation with one of the special assistants to the president,
Yeah.
and did not get the gala right
Mm-hmm.
at the time, and we're
Yeah.
still seeking that. We still want that. Didn't
Yeah.
get it at the time, but we did get a meeting at the
Mm-hmm.
White House regarding sickle cell disease and the state of sickle cell disease, and we put together a great report, probably about 2 pages long, executive summary.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the beginning. Things started to change from that point on. We started to gain traction.
So in that discussion piece, that executive summary, what were the things that what was the change that you were trying to highlight and saying this needs to happen? Can you think of some of those change points that you were?
Yeah, sure. For us, the biggest was, let's create a national task force around sickle cell disease, and let's focus on the emergency department problem. That was it. That was like the axe. Besides the gala, the axe was to create this task force, coming out of the White House and working with multiple agencies, and we figured that, with the support of the White House, we could begin to change and reshape some of the treatment and some of the cure. The way adults living with sickle cell disease were being treated in emergency departments in the U.S. And so that led us to other relationships, organizations that we did create. Let me say that we did create the task force. It wasn't out of the White House, but it was connected to a lot of prominent organizations and agencies, and so we were successful at doing that, and we faced some challenges. Learned a lot.
Tell me about how you set up your task force, and you said that there were some challenges along the way in getting that task force up and running and the achievements. So how did you set about making up your task force?
Well, of course, we wanted to work with the organizations, the Emergency Nurse Association. There were certain national organizations that had some type of jurisdiction or govern some of the responsibilities and policies within the emergency room.
Mm-hmm.
And so we wanted to make sure that they were at the table, because that's where the issue was. And so Office of Joint Commission that oversees, giving credentials to hospitals and things of that nature. And so we were able to get these folks together. We put together a meeting. Now remember, we wasn't being funded for this. This was out of our own resources.
Mm-hmm.
And so at the time, Shakir Cannon had joined myself and Dominique, and so we were on a mission to really try to resolve. And I want to make mention, we were working with a wonderful gentleman that I give credit to, Alan Ten, who created this app. Well, I'll call it an app at the time, and it was where iCloud, you can put the link into your phone, and as patients go into the emergency department, doctors or individuals would be able to pull up their information to see what they needed. And so I thought it was one of the most powerful tools that patients could have at their disposal at the time. Others didn't.
So you made it
And
patient-centered. You made
yeah,
it from what you're saying, it was patient-centered. The app was allowing patients to have control about this is who I am.
absolutely, absolutely.
All right.
And
And
it
what?
was validated by their physicians, and so there's a whole process because he was being funded by innovations grant here in at part of NIH, and so it was part study as well, and so it was an incredible tool. Even to this day, it would be an incredible tool. But there were individuals at that meeting that did not want him there.
Why?
And had asked for us to remove him. And my thought was, it has maybe there's some competition out there, or someone's developing something, and they want to position that person. That was my immediate thought.
That makes sense. That makes sense.
Yeah, and or either it was just for this not to come forward, and it was just a devastating moment and a real reality for me at that time and for us. I mean, these stories, them telling us, being told for the first time. And so that was a huge blow because we, at that point, we pushed back, and of course pushed back. That group, some of those folks came off of the committee and circumvent and started their own ED kind of. I'm not going to call it a task force, but these were highly sought after professionals that were getting funding. They were getting funding in this arena, and we certainly wasn't supporting us with the funding, but they were getting funding to address this issue as well. So the real reason why I have my reasons why I think about it, but because I'm not 100%, I only know that what happened, that there was pushback, and we pushed back, and when we pushed back, then things started to kind of fall apart. And I know Dominique has continued to focus in that area, but
so you had this skilled team, a skilled task force, people who understood the disease, had designed elements which were patient-centered, patient-focused, to maximize the care that the patients would be able to receive when they're going into an emergency room. So you had a specific focus of an emergency room setting where, because of the types of training, people may not have encountered it, but you were giving them the tools. If I can look at it in another way, you were giving them the tools for anyone who's a qualified physician to be able to say, right, this is the next course of action because we've got the information from the patient themselves.
Absolutely, 100% accurate.
And yet after that, there was still pushback from the system.
Totally. And let me be frank. I don't let things go like that. And there was a video that was around, that's still out there on YouTube, of a young lady in a hospital. And the police was there, and they were telling her she has to leave the hospital. She's crying, just crying on the video. It's a devastating video to see, and it brought back, a lot of memories. I watched that video last year, and the young lady, she's not even with us today, and it caused me to reach out to the national organization again. Reach out to them. I know the chief medical officer over there, and I said, we're still here. So what are we going to do? And let's just say nothing happened. So it's not an issue. It's not an issue that we have real history with this issue and real concerns still to this day. And I still like to see some real progress in this area, even as we're making other progress, with sickle cell. But the everyday, there's adults with sickle cell are still suffering and still being mistreated. And I think the United States, it's happening here in the United States, it's probably happening in other areas as well.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Because many people would think of the US with its healthcare. I know it's a different funding model compared to the UK, but people always think about the technological advancements and the things which we perceive to be available in the US. So you would have thought that they would be the world leaders in the treatment and the understanding of sickle cell disease. And if anyone's going to make a breakthrough, it would come from there. Do you see any breakthroughs coming?
I compare it to it's Black Lives Matter, the movement, the injustices around criminal justice system. Those same things are parallel, are basically the same on the medical side when it comes to sickle cell. You can put those two things together and they match. So no, we're not making progress in that area at all, and it's quite shameful, to be honest with you.
It's I'm finding it hard, right? I'm not, because it's that health inequality, that health disparity, right? And you mentioned already Black Lives Matter, right? So suggesting that because of our race, if it was a different race of people, then treatments may be more forthcoming, or progress may be more forthcoming. So
absolutely. I mean, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, go on.
I mean, to your point, there'd be many centers of excellence around. The funding would be times 10 is what we're seeing on the federal level. I mean, it would be extensive. And there's no way that type of treatment would be going on and patients being treated that way on record. And let me tell you something, it's no secret. It's well documented. It's well documented, and you can go and see the video that I'm referring to. It's there. I'll send it to you.
Yeah.
After the interview, it's terrible to watch, and very emotionally disturbing and that's what I can say.
So
it's disturbing.
Because your advocacy stemmed from your wife's initial crisis and excuse me, and you wanting to find out more, make it more patient-centered. So from my understanding, you also had a business partner or a partner who came on and helped. How did that partnership develop? What happened, and what were you trying to achieve together in that setting?
At that point, it was, following the meeting at the White House where,
Mhm,
2015, there was a creation of the Minority Coalition for Precision Medicine.
mhm.
And so Shakir had decided that, hey, Mike, I want to work with you, because you're not just going to tackle sickle cell disease. We're going to tackle the 9 diseases or 9 major issues that primarily impacts African Americans. And
Mhm.
so, and that was a part of the precision medicine initiative. So we had to broaden, our scope, but at the same time, we were going to keep sickle cell disease at the center of
Right.
these conversations because it wasn't on the radar. There's no
Yeah.
therapies at the time, really. I mean, the hydroxyurea, but there's nothing really major in the pipeline. And so here we are right now at the very beginning of precision medicine, and wanting to ensure that us as a community is certainly not left out of these emerging technologies. And should something come forth for sickle cell disease, guess what? We're going to be on it.
Yeah.
And it did. And it did, right? And it did. So here comes CRISPR. And
Mhm,
we're right there. I mean,
mhm.
we're in the room. I mean, we're at the White House, and now we're working with Harvard, and now Harvard's recommending we're working with folks out of Hollywood, and so it just got really big, really fast,
Yeah.
and having these conversations with movie writers and producers in Hollywood, and Shakira's there, we're excited, and they ask Shakira like, Shakira, if if CRISPR was available today, would you utilize it? And what do you think, man? Shakir just stood his chest out and said, "Man, I'd be like Superman." I mean, it's like a big statement, but I mean, the room lit up. Okay, the room lit up. There was a couple hundred writers and producers in there in California, and so here we are now at the center of this technology, working with Innovative Genomics Institute, and where's this going, right? And we're just excited. We're there and we're present, and it was a game changer. And so the next step was, you know, how these clinical trials are going to turn out, and if so, and right at the height of as an organization, Shakir, who was a very healthy patient individual, right,
Mhm.
worked every day, wife and a kid, working with me diligently, gets sick and just succumb to the disease like that out of nowhere, just suddenly.
Wow. Yeah.
And so um, it just it took a while. I continued to move forward, but like, how am I going to continue? You know,
Yeah.
in this way, I was more the visionary, but he was the one that was when it actionable, right? I
Yeah.
mean, here's what we see, is what we're going to do.
Yeah.
And he was that person, and
Yeah.
loved them. We're at CRISPR Con,
Mhm.
the advisory committee on CRISPR conversations, and they placed me on the committee. Shakira was one of the first patient speakers uh, to that extent, and so he made a huge impact. And so I'll
Could-
stop there for a minute.
No, I was going to just ask you, just for the benefit of those who may not fully understand what CRISPR is, can you just give us a quick glimpse of when you say CRISPR, what you mean by CRISPR, and what was the potential game changing nature of CRISPR, which got everybody so excited?
Yeah, I explained it in a non-scientific way. It's real
Yeah.
simple to me, and I could just show you, but I'm not. I could walk over to my light switch and turn it off, and turn it back on. That's CRISPR. It just goes in, find that bad gene, clips it, replaces it, and there basically is a cure. And for
So,
sickle cell, that is it.
so you're just going in, you're cutting out the bad, and you're replacing it with the
Absolutely,
good, and
that's it.
and have 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 there been any trials
Oh
or
my goodness. Yeah. We're past the trials. It
Mhm.
is actually in the hands of two companies and in the market currently. And
Yeah,
so I believe hundreds of patients have been cured with CRISPR. I mean, don't hold me to that number, but it's been quite a
yeah,
few that has been cured. And now CRISPR Therapeutics, whom I've had the chance to work with early on before it was approved, um, is one of the companies that very expensive though, price tag. It's up there. It's in the millions
yeah.
per person. And I believe Bluebird Bio is another one. And so the price ranges from anywhere from 1.5 to up to 3 million per patient. Uh,
Wow. But but when you
yeah,
think of but when you think about it, we say that's a big price tag. But if you look
big
at the
price
health,
tags.
yeah, when you look at the health economics, right? When you look at a patient living with sickle cell and the recurrence of going into hospital and the stayovers, the other treatments, the medication, 1.5
Mhm.
isn't that much.
Absolutely not. Yeah, right. When you right, exactly right. And I think that's that with all that being considered, because there is a cost, for caring for the sickle cell patient throughout their lifespan, and it falls uh CRISPR falls way short of that. I mean that cost. And
So
we,
so how effectively I'm going we're going back to the Sickle Cell National Association. They might sue me after
uh-huh.
this, but never mind, right?
No, no, no. Well, probably go once. We can have follow-up conversations. But go ahead,
All right.
because
So,
it's gonna be in the book. It's gonna be in the book. I'm writing a book.
yeah,
Come out next year, so.
right. So in terms of that, in having what you're classing as an effective cure, right? And
Right.
why has that not been broadcast kind of like worldwide? Why isn't it considering? I
Let
and
me, man,
I,
you are asking great questions, and I
because
have answers.
I'm thinking to myself, from a genetics background,
Right.
sickle cell was the very first genetic mutation which was identified and shown to be a disease causing mutation. And it was also shown to be one um, amino acid change, right, which was
Uh-huh.
causing the effect. Okay. So the
Right.
fact that you potentially have a cure for the very first genetically identified disease, you would have thought it would be, we've got to show what we can do. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah. You ready for this answer? I think you're ready.
You tell me, whatever answer you give, I'm ready for it.
Let me tell you, there are people out there in our community that really lacks vision.
Mm,
And
mm,
sometimes you get folks, and I'm speaking of these folks or a group of folks, that there are a lot of people out there that have to see it to believe it. And here you are, you're waiting for this to develop. You don't even want to be a part. See, Mr. Gear, we're not going to wait. We're going to be a part of the conversation as it moves forward,
mhm.
because we want this conversation to grow and get louder, right? So when it does do what it's capable of, then we're prepared, we're ready, we're on deck. And that's what CRISPR-Con was. CRISPR-Con, let me tell you, those folks were not sitting around waiting for CRISPR to come about. They were having the conversations back then. And guess what? As it came forth, they're ready and prepared, and they're
Yeah,
mobilized now. Okay, now with us, the Sickle Cell Disease Association of America, point to them, it, they wasn't even prepared in a sense. Wasn't at the
yeah,
table. And I think this is just an organization that just has no foresight. There's no vision, to some extent. And that's not picking on them, but what I was told was this. That's what I was told. The problem with that organization, it was too top heavy with medical folks, people with medical backgrounds. And I said, well, what's the issue with that? I mean, want that? He said, well, let me tell you something. They're not going to ask for money.
But why not?
Can you imagine researchers it kind of baffled me. Like I'm saying, they're not, because he said, I mean, their focus is a little different, when it comes to advocacy and things of that nature. And so I don't know. I think that maybe the imbalance in their board was the problem. I think if they were set up different with more, like which saying patient centered. I think that's probably still the right word for today. It may have changed, but if that was their focus, then I think we would be having a different conversation today, for sure. And I believe their national conference is going on currently in Atlanta as we speak. Wow. So I'm sure some of those companies are there participating. But if we go back, patients could have been learning about this early on and been more prepared to move forward with these decisions. And so I think now there has to be a lot of probably convincing, could have had the patients more part of the process, and building their confidence to some extent along the way.
I'm gonna ask you another couple questions, and if anyone from the audience wants to chime in with a question, then put your hand up and we'll get to you. My question is going back to this idea of your sense of belonging and your sense of identity. Having gone through this journey, how does that make you feel in terms of your sense of belonging when you see these things happening around you?
I always think about, impact, right? And if I could make changes to anything, I wanted it to be broad, right? I wanted to have major impact. And so, and for me, I've been able to do that thus far. And so very happy about then and now, and even the challenges that we face along the way, and the learning opportunities. But most importantly, I can say that what Shakira and I set out to accomplish is being fulfilled. And I believe that 2025 will be a very telling year for us in many, many ways.
I'm going to just go back to one question, kind of like close the circle. You originally became interested, or your awareness about sickle cell disease came about because of the incident with your wife. Is your wife still with us?
Yes, ex-wife now, but yeah, she's still with us. I Atlanta,
yeah, right. So in that sense, that impact, I suppose you also want to see, because it was the way it came about, and for all sickle cell patients to ensure that they are getting the right treatment, which is effective for them. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
So what more would you want to see done? What more would you want to see done?
Well, I can say this much, and I'll just what I like to see done is and more African Americans in particular in the CRISPR field,
Mhm.
And certainly one of the goals was for us to establish one of the first African American owned biotech companies focusing on diseases such as sickle cell disease. And so that is definitely something that I'm pursuing and have some inroads and see a path forward with that. And so I
Mhm.
can see that happening
Mhm.
soon.
Because I'm just thinking back, and you had mentioned about there being nine focal gene or nine focal diseases which you wanted to tackle when we're talking about the precision medicine. What give
Absolutely.
us a flavor of some of the others? We've got sickle cell. What were some of the other ones which you were focusing on to try to see where we can, where science, technology, African American researchers can really delve into?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you know, the top is cancer, right?
Right.
HIV, can't forget about that.
Mm-hmm.
Diabetes,
Mm-hmm.
obesity,
Mm-hmm.
you know, mental health, uh,
Mm-hmm.
things around mental health, and so
Mm-hmm.
those are some of
Mm-hmm.
the ones. But definitely diabetes, cardiovascular disease, issues
Mm-hmm.
around the heart,
So you
and
want,
so those.
so from what I'm hearing, you're wanting more inclusion in the research so that we're part of that research story so we can understand the biology from what are the factors which are influencing these disease
Yeah,
formations within the African American
yeah,
communities?
yeah. We're saying basically, I'm saying we're like yes, inclusion, but guess what? We're gonna go a little beyond that because right now we want equity.
Right.
We want we want resources, right?
Yeah.
We want a part of that. I mean,
Yeah.
let's be honest. I mean, where would CRISPR be outside of sickle cell disease?
Mm-hmm. 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 Well,
Wouldn't be.
there's a few other, well, there's a few other genetic disorders which CRISPR is,
Yeah,
yeah, but yeah,
yeah. But
understand.
she was the first one through,
Yeah.
to show forth the technology as being doable, right?
Yeah.
Here again, a black disease.
Yeah.
You know,
So
first shall be last, and the last shall be first.
yeah, I understand what you're saying. If it hadn't been for the fact of the discovery of this single point mutation, right,
Yeah.
and people's efforts to see if they can correct these point mutations, so it's that cyclical. Because of this
Yes.
happened. Yeah,
Absolutely.
I
Yes.
understand that. I understand that logic. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's like Stuart Hall, a great philosopher,
Mm.
sociologist, philosopher, and his mantra was, "We are here because you were there." So there is always a
Mm.
cause and effect. There was something which was discovered, which meant that something else has happened. You know,
That's right.
yeah,
That's right. And that takes us even into the story of Henrietta Lack. And so,
that's right.
yeah. And so we need to be fully recognized in
Mhm.
for those accomplishments,
Yeah.
as African Americans, and we need to be not just at the table, but we need to be making some of the same progress and same opportunities and deals on the economic side, right? And so
Yeah.
that's where the focus is. So we don't, me and Shakir, we didn't look at this from just from the standpoint of a nonprofit. We looked
Mhm.
at it in a broader perspective, and and see the need for African American owned, majority owned
Mhm.
biotech companies in the
Mhm.
CRISPR field.
Fantastic. All right, I'm gonna ask my final two questions, right? And they're kind of like the opposite of the same question, but one of them would be, what advice would you have given to your younger self? All right, that's the first question. And then the second part of the question is, what do you think your younger self would look at you now and say, wow? So what advice would you give, and what's your wow factor?
Well, let's start with the second part. The wow factor is living, growing up in East Baltimore, and without like formal education and degrees to that extent, and being able to be in some of those rooms and conversations to the extent in which I have has been really like a wow factor to me. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I could remember sometimes I'm sitting in the car in the middle of a parking lot during COVID or something, and having these extensive conversations. It could be with the White House or folks out of the White House, or in other agencies, and it was just like I'd step out that car into the world and be like, wow, if people only knew.
Yeah.
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 So that was
Absolutely.
yeah. So that was
Absolutely.
yeah. My what would I tell my for my younger self? I to just keep dreaming
Mm,
and don't give up, not ever,
mm, mm,
regardless of what it looks like. Keep going.
yeah.
And so, if I answered your questions correctly, that would
No,
be
that's beautiful. I
okay.
love the wow factor. I love
Yeah,
the advice that you would keep dreaming. That's beautiful.
yeah.
You know, I think all of us need to keep dreaming. I think
Keep
I
dreaming.
I always think of the fact that you'd never have been able to put a man on the moon, right? You'd never
Right.
have been able to put a man on the moon had it not been for somebody dreaming. Yeah,
Absolutely.
without
Absolutely.
without that
Yeah,
dream, it wouldn't have happened.
that's
Yeah,
right. And there's something that says scripture would say, without vision, people perish.
that's right. Absolutely. Without the
Right?
vision, people perish. So if
Yeah,
you
without
keep
the
being
vision.
that visionary, right? You keep
Absolutely.
being that visionary. Keep keep
Yes.
keep um
Yes.
looking above and beyond. Not what we're
Absolutely.
seeing right now, what it
Right.
could be. Yeah,
That's exactly right. Yeah.
yeah,
And so yeah, that's where we are.
that's it.
We're in the process of seeking a lot of resources, and me and Shakir conversations always started at $1 billion. So for those that listen, we don't even think, like, come on, like, well, how much is it gonna cost to fix it? $1 billion.
That might be the starting spot.
Everyone knows it's true, though. It's true,
Yeah,
right?
that's right.
So when we draw our vision, our plans is based upon $1 billion plan, and we hold true to that till this day, and
Yeah,
so we're still after that.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So let's see how we can work together,
absolutely.
to make that happen, make that happen. It's interesting that actually
Thank you.
today I'm at a conference which is the launch of the Sickle Cell Alliance, which is in Imperial and a number of other agencies trying to see about patient advocacy, how it is that we can um, have a link between the doctors, the patients, to get better care, better treatment for individuals with
Absolutely.
sickle cell. So
Yeah.
it's a
Great.
very, very meaningful topic, and it's not just head knowledge that we need. We need that practical implementation. It's the intentionality, and I love what you've been talking about, because when I use the word intentionality, I think about it in terms of intention with action.
Absolutely.
Intention with action.
With
You,
action.
yeah, you know how many
Yeah.
people have
Let
good
me let me
intentions.
tell you. I mean, I'm not trying to turn this into like a religious conversation, but man, there's so much scripture in what you're saying.
Yeah,
That's like faith without works is dead.
that's right. That's right. That's right.
I'm just saying, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I like that balance too. But this is great, and I want us to, as we think about sickle cell,
Mhm.
as a community, us as a community of people, let's think more international, because
That's right.
it's important, because CRISPR is here, and there are a lot of patients, individuals across the world, that ultimately is going to benefit from this technology. So, I talked about, early on, the organization, and
Mhm.
how I felt some failures. Not that they can't get it right, they can. But as we move forward, let's think international
That's
partnerships
right.
and relationships as it comes to, where we are
Yeah,
with sickle cell disease.
yeah. It has to be an international collaboration.
Absolutely.
I think that's where our strength lies, in our numbers. Yeah, across boundaries. You know what?
That's right.
Sickle
That's right.
cell doesn't say, oh, I'm only going to stay in Africa.
Yeah.
It doesn't say I'm only going to stay in Baltimore, the
Yeah.
USA. It's everywhere.
That's
So that's how
that's right.
we have to approach it. You know.
And I don't know how much time we have, but I want to put out
Mhm.
this challenge for us.
Mhm.
Let's make June 19th, World Sickle Cell Day, the biggest event in the history of
Well,
Juneteenth and World Sickle Cell Day. Let's work towards that. You
let's
know,
work towards that.
Canada doesn't have to be here in the U.S. I mean, but wherever we decide to do it,
Yeah,
I'd love to come to
yeah,
UK and do something.
yeah.
Let's make it big for the people
Let's
that's living with sickle cell disease and suffering. We can
absolutely.
start now. Yeah.
let's
Okay.
let's start planning. Let's start planning.
Yeah.
And
Let's do
remember,
that. Let's
as you
do that.
said, faith without works is dead. Intention
That's
without
right.
action, yeah, is dead.
Yes.
Right. So let's make
Yes.
this intentionality, make it happen. All right.
Absolutely. Yes.
Michael, it's been an absolute pleasure hearing your journey, right? And hearing about the steps and the strides which you're making in putting sickle cell patients front and center of sickle cell disease and their treatment and where we want them to go. So, as I said, we're going to continue working towards this, and
Thank you.
we're gonna make things happen. All
Oh,
right.
I promise you. Yeah.
All
I
right.
promise you that. Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
My word.
I'm gonna just share with everybody what's going to be happening with our next interview. Let me just, hopefully you can see that. So our next interview is going to be with Caspar Nayam Nokumwe Dewa, and he is a provost visiting professor in um, entomology. So that's the study of insects. And his specialist interest is target malaria. So it's kind of like the opposite end of sickle cell, because many people believe that sickle cell trait was gave selective advantage against malaria. So here we're going to have Caspar, who's going to be talking about his work in order to try to eliminate malaria and how he's been doing that. And if you have missed any of the other interviews, then please go to our YouTube channel, which is tinyurl.com/belonging-IAO. And our books out. We had our launch on Monday, which was the Black PhD Experience, which talks about many of those individuals who Michael was referring to. We need to have our Black PhD scientists working in the field to help tackle issues related to Black people. We need to be at the table. And to all of those guests who have shared their stories, who have given up their time to tell us about how they've gained their sense of identity and belonging, we say thank you. And until next time, until next week, please stay safe. Remember, the clocks go back tomorrow evening or Sunday morning. And just remember, we belong here. Just stop the recording.